Oh, yay. on your personal beliefs and values. We're extremely excited to offer this course, and we think that it will be a deep and meaningful journey exploring UUism. Again, that's today at 12:30 in the Lizzie Crozer French Room. And speaking of Mark, I'm going to introduce Mark Mahundro as he's going to tell us about our Share the Plate this afternoon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Mahundro. I'm Prospective New Member Coordinator, and this morning I'm here to introduce our offering. Today is a Share the Plate offering. That means that all donations, half of which will go to the recipient. And today's recipient is Mountain Access Brigade. It is our local abortion fund. They help women or pregnant people to get to a state that has access. We have a total ban here in Tennessee, and it's getting pretty bad in other places. And I know Mountain Access Brigade is hurting for donations, and they provide a very, very valuable service. The only state near us that has access right now would be Virginia. So, and the ways that you can put cash or check in the offering basket when it comes around. There's a kiosk in the church lobby. You can donate securely at our website, and you could give a donation via text send TVUUC and the amount to 73256. That's text TVUUC to 73256 and put in the amount of the donation. Thank you very much.
All right, and please join us for coffee and conversations after the service in the fellowship hall or out on the patio, maybe with a warm cup of coffee. Now please silence your cell phones or other electronic devices as we enter into worship.
The Carnival of the Animals is a set of pieces by Camille Sanson, and each piece represents a particular animal in the carnival. And this particular piece represents the animal pianists. And you will hear pianists practicing, and the point of this piece is that practice is a unending goal. You practice, you make some mistakes, and you keep going. And at the end, you will hear that it doesn't sound like a finished piece because your practice is never finished.
Wonderful. Our opening words come from Maureen Killaren, and your part is to say, "We like this chalice." We like this chalice. For every time we make a mistake and we decide to start again. We like this chalice. For every time we are lonely and we let someone be our friend. We like this chalice. For every time we are disappointed, we choose hope. We like this chalice. Come, let us worship together. Let us join together in our hymn. The words are in your order of service.
Glad to be gathered this morning with all those who are here in the sanctuary and those who are watching from elsewhere in the building or at home or another space. It's good to be gathered. I have a question. I wonder, Do you think that there is any person ever who has never made a mistake? Or never done something on purpose that later they realized, or maybe somebody told them that it maybe wasn't the best choice to make? Some of our young people have heard me ask that question before as we do our RE Covenant each week, because we don't expect ourselves to be perfect people, do we? But we know also part of being human is making mistakes. And making mistakes can feel really rough, right? We can feel really bad sometimes when we make a mistake. But did you know that some of the things we enjoy or that we use all the time were actually invented and only exist because of a mistake? So I have a couple of examples this morning. In 1928, so almost 100 years ago, Dr. Alexander Fleming returned from a holiday. He had gone on vacation and left his lab. He returned to his lab to find mold growing on a petri dish of bacteria. If you find something that's moldy, what do you do? You maybe go kind of, ooh, mold. Or you might, I heard somebody say you might throw it away. Well, he noticed something in that dish. He noticed that none of the bacteria was right up against that mold in the petri dish. The mold seemed to be preventing the bacteria from growing. And he was a scientist, and he paid attention to that. The mold, he discovered, produced a self-defense kind of chemical that could kill bacteria. And he named that substance, and does anybody have a guess what he named it? Penicillin, which is a medication that has helped many, many, many people. Now, in 1905, even earlier than that, there was a kid who was 11 years old. Has anybody here ever been 11? Some of us have, some of us have not yet. Well, there was a kid named Frank Epperson who was 11 years old in 1905, and he had a cup of soda, and he had a stirring stick in it, and he left it outside overnight. He hadn't finished it. And he discovered it the next day, and it was in the winter, and it was really cold. So what do you think happened to it? It froze. It had frozen solid with that stick still in it. And he thought that was really kind of funny. He pulled it out, and it occurred to him to try it. He licked it, and he thought, oh, this is really yummy. And he called his invention the Epsicle, because his name was Epperson. And as he grew up, years and years later, he continued making his Epsicles and began to share them with other people, and they became more and more popular. And eventually, as they got more popular, they changed the name because his kids started calling them Popsicle. What are those? Popsicles! We have Popsicle because Frank Epperson, as a kid, accidentally left his drink outside overnight. Yeah. So whether a mistake that you have made has led to a fabulous new invention, or maybe something positive in your own life, or maybe it was just a really big bummer that nothing good came of, there might be something great about all of our mistakes because they mean that we are human, and they can remind us that we are human and that the other people around us are too, and that we're not expected to get things right all the time. They can teach us that it's okay to make mistakes, even if sometimes the only good that comes from them is that we learn exactly what we do not want to do next time. Has anybody here made a mistake ever that taught you something you do not want to ever do again? Yeah. So today is part of our service. Throughout the service today, we're going to acknowledge and later on bless some of our great mistakes, some of the great mistakes within our community. And so I have an invitation for you. Some of you may have noticed that there is a Post-it note on the cover of your order of service, and I have a whole lot more here, and in a little bit, I'm going to ask for anybody who would like to be a helper to help carry them out to anybody who needs one. So when I ask for my helpers to come up and help, if you don't have a Post-it note and you would like one, if you raise your hand, we'll make sure one comes to you. And the invitation is for this morning during the service. I want to invite you to write or draw on your Post-it note or ask somebody sitting near you to help you write or draw a mistake of your own. Don't write your name on it. It doesn't have to be something big. It might be something really silly or it might be something serious. It is up to you. Don't put your name on it because later in the service, we're going to collect them. We're going to gather those Post-it notes and post them together on a display of TVUUC Community's Great Mistakes. And if you are watching this service in a setting that has comments, I invite you to put comments of your great mistakes, if you would like, on the stream as well. And so I invite you to think about an oops that you have made at some point and put it on your Post-it note, and we will let you know when it is time to bring them up. So as we move on to the next part, anybody who would like to be a helper to help make sure everybody has a Post-it note, come on up here to help me out. And if you need a Post-it note, if you would raise your hand, we will get one to you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is David Massey. I'm a member of the spiritual care team here at TVUUC. That team also includes Carolyn Rogers, John Montgomery, John Coffey, Mebby Jackson, Mike Matfee, Tina Becker, and I'm very happy to announce that it now also includes Wimberly Thompson. Wimberly, we're so glad to have you with us. We are heart-centered, deep listeners who, along with many of you, see to the caring needs of the congregation. If you have something on your mind that you'd like to talk about, if you need a visit, if you need a ride to the hospital or to a doctor's appointment, if you want to share something for joys and concerns, all you have to do is pick up the phone and call the pastoral care line. That number is in your order of service and in the weekly newsletter. Today is the second Sunday of the month, so it is Listening Booth Sunday. After the service, stop by one of the listening booths in the hallway to talk with us in confidence about whatever is on your mind or in your heart. Carolyn Rogers and Wimberly Thompson will be ready to listen. Also, please visit the caring table in the Greg McKendry Fellowship Hall after the service to add your name to the messages of support to people who need our good wishes. Jane Rapparelli and Carolyn Franks are volunteering at that table this morning. This is the time in our service when we give voice to joys and concerns in the community and in the congregation. And in our larger community, worldwide, we very much have on our minds this morning the devastating impacts of climate change. People in western North Carolina and upper East Tennessee are still struggling to recover from the devastating floods from the Hurricane Helene just a few months ago. And now, as we speak, people are fleeing from wildfires in Los Angeles. In the congregation, Ken Kitchen lost a family member this week. His 18-and-a-half-year-old Yorkie, Abby, died peacefully in his arms on Wednesday. The loss has been especially difficult for Ken because Abby had bonded so closely with Ken's late husband, Larry. Ken is comforted by his two other companion canines, Bobby and Loki, and yet many of us in this congregation know the loss of any beloved pet can leave a hole in your heart. Ken, you are in our hearts this morning. We also send healing wishes to Virginia Douglas, who was a member of this congregation a few years back. She participated in several groups, including those who got together to sing old harp-shaped note music. Virginia now lives in Vermont to be near her daughter, and right now she is recovering from a hospital stay for arrhythmia and also the loss of an eye due to an infection. Please sign the card for her at the caring table. Faye Joyce was in the ER this past week diagnosed with type A influenza. Thanks to Carolyn Rogers, she got out of the hospital and to a pharmacy to get her medications and back home. Faye is recovering at home. In a separate situation, Faye, Judy Ann Langston, and Sue Wright are all doing okay following an automobile wreck about 2 weeks ago. We're counting this as a joy because they're all doing all right, except that due to the force of the seatbelt, Judy Ann was bruised around her solar plexus, but she is doing better, Sue reports. Also, I just want to remind everybody that this coming Tuesday at 6 p.m., there will be a memorial service in this room for Pat Carter, officiated by Reverend Buice. The celebration of life will also double as a birthday party for Pat, because Tuesday would have been her 100th birthday. And as a maker of music, as a teacher of music, as an author of many books on piano lessons, we will be celebrating her music by people who she loved. And so please join us at 6 p.m. on Tuesday. For all of these joys and concerns, as well as those held in privacy or that are unknown to us, let us join together in singing "Sending You Light." The words are printed in your order of service.
Share with you a prayer that was written to help us reflect on some of the negative voices we may have in our own head. And this is by Lori Walk. So enter into a time of meditation or prayer. Gracious God, who is known by many names and sometimes known by no name at all, and experienced in silence, we are not supposed to talk about hearing voices in our head. That's how rumors get started. But there's a voice, a familiar stranger, that we can't seem to turn down or turn off. One that says we're a mess, a mistake, a fool, a fraud. That voice says everyone else has it together. Everyone else's children are well behaved. Everyone else has no trouble following the rules. Everyone else has 3 months of living expenses put back. That voice makes it hard to hear you. So we convince ourselves that it's better to keep our head down. Don't rock the boat. Try to shrink ourselves to fit expectations. Make ourselves small. But the psalmist says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made of stars and dust. Our stories say stars and dust. Help us remind each other that every chance we get, maybe this is how we better hear you. With these words in our hearts and spirits, let us enter into a time of stillness and quiet. Amen. 2 months ago, Patsy Farmer came up to me and said, I fell in a hole outside the church. And she actually had to take me outside for me to even imagine what that might look like. But sure enough, there had been some erosion underneath our patio so that what looked like solid earth gave way. And Patsy fell into that hole. And we've been deliberating for 2 months now on how to fix that hole. So I've asked Patsy to come forward, and once she reads this poem, you'll know why I chose it.
Sorry. Autobiography in 5 short chapters by Portia Nelson. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I'm helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes me forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I am in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street.
We'll now have our offering.
The story behind this piece is that Keith Jarrett was concertizing and on the road, and he had a concert in Cologne, and he was really tired. They were far away. They had to travel. I think they had lost their train tickets or run out of funds, but something was getting in the way of their arriving. They arrived really, really late, just in time for the concert, and the wrong piano was there. It wasn't tuned. It was kind of broken, and so Keith Jarrett wanted to cancel the concert, but he eventually ended up doing it, and he just sat down at that piano that was broken and normally would have been considered unusable, and he just made up an evening's worth of music. So this is a short selection from the very beginning and the very end of that concert.
have a reading to share with you today that really is like a story because it is a story. It's adapted from one written by Joanna Hobai. But first, I have a secret to tell you. Every single Sunday, before I come up here to tell you all a story, I wonder, is this the week that I come up here and start telling the story and then forget the entire thing? And I guess a story on a Sunday about mistakes is the most appropriate one for that to have happen. So I am not without that worry, but I suppose this could be an okay day to do it, wouldn't it? Well, this story especially makes sense for that because it is a story about a mistake. Oh, you made a mistake. And that mistake feels like a stone. Can you imagine that you're holding a big stone in your hands? It's big enough you have to use both hands to hold it. But this isn't any ordinary stone. It gets bigger and bigger and bigger because you worry. And the more you worry, the bigger that stone gets. Do you feel the weight of that? And then it carries you out to sea. We're changing our metaphor here now because it is a whale of a mistake. Now it's like a giant whale that has carried you out to sea and you are stranded on its back. And as people see it go by, they shake their heads and say, "Oh my, what a big mistake." And you shout to it, "Leave me alone," but the mistake doesn't listen to you. And you're stuck. Can you imagine being out at sea, stuck on the back of a giant whale? You're worried, and you're scared, and you're unsure, and you don't know what to do, so you do the only thing you can do, which is lie down on it. And you say, "Okay, I guess this is my life now." Have any of us ever had a mistake or a time we were struggling with where we felt like, all right, this is just the way it is now, forever? And you lie on the back of that whale of a mistake for a long time, but then you gather up your courage to open up your eyes and you see something above you. What might you see if you were looking up at the sky out in the middle of the ocean late at night? What might you see? Stars. A moon. You see stars, and you see the moon, and you see something that might be a planet because it's an extra bright star, and you think they are perfect. But are they? Because some are falling. Have any of us ever seen a shooting star? And you begin to realize maybe there's a whole universe of mistakes out there. Are they mistakes too? And suddenly your mistake doesn't seem so very big anymore, and it seems like maybe it's starting to get smaller. And after a while, you realize you are in control now of where you're headed, though you maybe still don't know the destination. But after a time, your mistake deposits you gently on a shore, and it begins to swim away, and you wave at it. Let's wave at our mistakes. And it waves back. And that is the story of the whale of a mistake. Thank you all.
It's an experiment, and it's based on an idea of Bobby McFerrin's, which means you need to sing along based on what I do with my body. And don't be worried about making mistakes, and know that when you're in a community of people singing, there's this group knowledge that is greater than anyone in the group, The group as a whole has a lot of knowledge and experience, has much more knowledge and experience about music than any one of us does. So be willing to just make sounds and listen to the group, and you will carry each other along. So, oh, and in the program, there's actually a mistake. The title is pentatonic, not pentatonic. So it isn't every possible note. It's just 5 of those possible notes. So, bum, 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 bum. Yay. I didn't tell you what I was thinking, but the group as a whole knew. Bum, 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 bum. Congratulations. You, as a group, knew what I was thinking in my head, even though I didn't sing it. Great job. Thank you.
So there's a traveling exhibit that's gone all around the world called the Mistake Museum. And here's how the Mistake Museum describes its own mission. It's actually called the Museum of Failure. The Museum of Failure is a collection of failed products and services from all around the world. The museum has 200 items, and new artifacts are added each year. Now, I know what you may be thinking. Nothing sounds more depressing than going to a museum of failure, looking at all the failed things. And yet, here's how the museum clarifies its mission. These are their words. Innovation needs failure. All progress, not only technological progress, is built on learning from past failures and mistakes. The museum aims to stimulate discussions about failure and inspire us to take meaningful risks. Now, in churches, we often talk about our faith. The word faith is something we use often, but a synonym for that word is meaningful risks. And there's no way to take meaningful risks without risking failure. As the philosopher Blaise Pascal once wrote, if we could never act except on the basis of a certainty, we would never act, because nothing is certain. So back to the words that the museum uses to describe its mission. The museum provides unique insight into the tricky business of innovation. Most innovation projects fail, and we showcase these failures to learn from them. So whenever we talk about taking a leap of faith, we are risking failure. My mother raised 5 kids and got a PhD, and I always say I'm happy to have raised 2 kids and have a master's degree. But one of her favorite poems, which she used in her doctoral dissertation, was this poem by Guillaume Apollinaire, Mistake. Here is the poem. Come to the edge, he said. We can't, we're afraid, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. We can't, we will fail, they responded. Come to the edge, he said. And so they came, and he pushed them, and they flew. Now, this is a beautiful poem. I can't read it without thinking about my mom, who really did take leaps of faith in her life and encouraged me to do so. However, I'm pretty sure that the authors Matthew Swanson and Robbie Bear had read that poem when they offered this meditation in their book called For the Love of God. The two authors wrote, "God beckons us to the edge. We are afraid. He tells us everything will be all right. The view will be spectacular if we only trust him. To his credit, God seems genuinely surprised when we fall. We have to remember the limits of God's optimism. We pick ourselves up and resume our slow ascent, damaged, bleeding, weary. To take a leap of faith is to risk failure. In other words, we can't really talk about leaps of faith without talking about past failures and our willingness to risk failure in the future. So the Museum of Failure includes many failed products, including 2 very unlikely flavors of Oreo cookies. Here's one: barbecue chicken wing Oreo cookies. Waffle and syrup Oreo cookies. The exhibit also includes Trump steaks, the Ford Edsel, Sony Betamax, Blockbuster videos, the hula chair. You can do the hula while you're at work, get some exercise. Colgate, and I am honestly mean the toothpaste company, Colgate's beef lasagna. And Kellogg's orange juice flavored cereal. These products and more. However, this morning I want to, the Museum of Failure asked us to reflect on other people's failures. This morning I want us to invite us all to reflect on our personal failures. And if I were to create a museum of failure based on my own experience, it would have to include the following moment. This is a story I've told before, and I take no pleasure in telling it again because it is absolutely the most mortifying moment of my ministry. I often call this story the time I had to do a memorial service without any pants. So one summer morning about a decade ago, I came in for a meeting in the morning, and so I was wearing shorts and a t-shirt, but I brought in a suit and a tie and a nice shirt and a hanger, and I hung it in the closet in the ministerial ready room. And about 45 minutes before the service, I took the coat off the hanger and realized I didn't have any pants. And if you know, I live about 30 minutes away, so there's no way to go home and come back again to get a pair of pants. So I started sending out emergency emails and phone calls, and I tore this church up looking for a pair of pants. And finally, and I have to tell you, I was absolutely mortified. I was distressed. And I finally figured out that I had a black robe that I could put on, and if I bent my knees a certain amount, nobody would notice that I wasn't wearing pants. And I was thinking about this as I was crossed my legs this morning, is because I had to be very careful not to cross my legs so as to reveal any ministerial hairy leg at that memorial service. But I was distressed and I was distraught, and right before the memorial service, I turned to our minister of pastoral care, Jenny Arthur, source of compassion, and I said, this will be funny one day. And she said, "It's funny now." So it helps that it was the memorial service of Larry Coleman, who had a wonderful sense of humor. There's Betty here today, but it was about, 3 months after the service before I told Betty about the pants episode, because I knew he would appreciate it, but not necessarily on the same day. And I was thinking about that, David, as the misspelling of the pentatonic improvisation, because that might have been my pentatonic improvisation. So, but the real experience there was horror and mortification. So it's to do ministry, to go into the ministry, is an enormous risk, and we're all called to the work of shared ministry, every single one of us in this room. And one of my favorite readings about shared ministry comes from the Reverend Gordon McKeeman, who writes, now I like these words because they include us all in every work of shared ministry we do. He wrote, ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckons forth hidden possibilities, inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another, carrying forward a long heritage of hope, liberation that has dignified and informed the human venture over many centuries, being present with, to, and for others in their terrors and torments, in their grief and misery and pain, knowing that these feelings are our feelings too, celebrating the triumphs of the human spirit, the miracles of birth and life, the wonders of devotion and sacrifice, witnessing to life-enhancing values, speaking truth to power, speaking for human dignity and equity, for compassion and aspiration, believing in life in the presence of death, struggling for human responsibility against principalities and structures that ignore humaneness and become instruments of death. It is all these and much, much more than all of them, present in the wordless, the unspoken, the ineffable. It is speaking and living the highest we know and living with the knowledge that it is never as deep or as wide as high as we wish. Whenever there is a meeting that summons us to our better selves, wherever our lostness is found, our fragments are united, our wounds begin healing, our spines stiffen, and our muscles grow weak for the task, there is ministry. This week, I was reading about how the board of First Unitarian Universalist Nashville has adopted the 8th principle as one of their goals, and one of the things that they were offering is a workshop on microaggressions. And they brought in 2 authors, Tiffany Jana and Michael Barra, who are authors of a book called Subtle Acts of Exclusion: How to Understand, Identify, and Stop Microaggressions. Now, this is part of their commitment to dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. And there's no way, one of the reasons I bring up microaggressions is because they are mistakes often. They are often mistakes. So what are microaggressions? Let me answer with a question. Have you ever offered someone a compliment that they received as an insult? And has anyone ever given you a compliment that you received as an insult? If you ever have, that's the territory of microaggression. Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines microaggressions in this way: a microaggression is a comment or action that subtly and often unconsciously and unintentionally expresses a prejudiced attitude or an exclusive attitude toward a member of a marginalized group, such as a racial minority. In other words, it's about subtle acts of exclusion, not obvious, not ones that sort of leap out and everyone can recognize them. For instance, when the Reverend Jametta Austin was our minister of pastoral care, one of her brainchilds was the free food pantry, and she was putting some food in there, and a member of the congregation mistook her for someone who had come there looking for food, as someone who was in need of help and offered help. Now, the intentions of the volunteer were very good, but that's the thing about microaggressions. Your intentions can be good. This was a white male volunteer in an African-American minister. So these kinds of things hurt. And I have had colleagues in the ministry, people of color, who have come up to, had someone come up to them and say, and think they were the janitor. These are microaggressions. People aren't necessarily trying to exclude someone, but they are subtle acts of exclusion. I still haven't quite figured out how that volunteer didn't recognize the person giving the prayer every Sunday in our church. Now, one of the reasons I love working with Jametta is because she could navigate those microaggressions. She knew how to work with them. I once had a member of the church who was very honest and said, I'm uncomfortable talking to a person of color for pastoral care purposes. And Jametta's response to that was, I appreciate honesty. I appreciate honesty because you can work with it. And so I always liked working with Jametta for that purpose, because we all make mistakes. We all say the wrong things. And I mention these stories not to shame anyone. I mention these stories because we all make mistakes, and microaggressions are often mistakes, unintentional, and yet still harmful and damaging. And we need to figure out how to navigate these, because you can have 99% of the people on the same page, and one person can make a mistake, and it can have implications for the whole congregation. So maybe we could hold a workshop on microaggression. Maybe that could be something that we do. I believe it could be, because it affects all the work we do, whether we're welcoming people, how we do the worship service. It's an important part of all the work we do. And it's appropriate that we are speaking about mistakes, moving to another topic, on this Sunday, because last Sunday we made a lot of mistakes at the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church. You may have had some confusion as you saw announcements about the church being closed, followed by announcements that the church was going to be open. So we had multiple announcements coming from multiple directions. Napoleon once said the only thing worse than a bad general is two good generals. And our church has always had a whole bunch of good generals, a whole bunch of good leaders. And so last week we saw some of that, and we've taken corrective action so we would be clear. But on behalf of the church, I apologize for our mistake. And I apologize on behalf of all our church leadership for that mistake. So moving forward, now that I've talked about the Mistake Museum and shared with you some of the things in my own personal life and in the life of the congregation that are mistakes, I want to invite you to enter into the examined life about these issues. And here are some discernment questions. Have you ever given someone a compliment that was received as an insult? Have you ever received a compliment that felt like an insult? Have you ever intentionally or unintentionally committed subtle acts of exclusion? Have you ever been one of those good generals who forgot to communicate with all the other good generals on your team? Have you ever had a solemn and serious and grave responsibility and had to figure out how to do it without any pants? If you've ever done any of these things, you are in the right place, because we are a place where people take leaps of faith. And we can't take leaps of faith without risking the occasional pratfall. So I invite you to come to the edge, even if you're afraid. I invite you to come to the edge, even if you're worried that you might fall. I invite you to come to the edge, because even if we fall flat on our faces, we can brush each other off and help each other get up. Come to the edge, because if the winds of the Spirit are blowing, we will fly. So be it. And now we will have the second part of our ritual of mistakes.
So it is time now to gather our great mistakes. But first, did you know that the Post-it notes that you have been putting your mistakes on exist themselves because of an accidental discovery too? Someone was trying to create a super strong glue, a scientist named Spencer Silver, whose formulation instead was the opposite. Instead of being really, really strong, it stuck really lightly to surfaces, but didn't bond tightly to them. And so he set it aside. He didn't know what to do with it. But years later, another scientist at the same company, at 3M, had an idea to use that kind of weak glue to create a bookmark that could stick to paper without damaging it. And eventually those bookmarks became Post-it notes, some of which we have made use of this morning. So we have mistakes upon mistakes here in this room, and we are going to gather them. So I would like to invite, I'm going to bring out a board to post them on. Anybody who would like to bring your mistake forward can do so during our song, or we can pass them to the ends of rows and hold them up. And anybody who would like to be a helper and bring them out and bring them up on our board can do so as well. And so please come and help us gather our great mistakes. Thank you.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back.
Gonna keep on moving proudly.
Gonna keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly.
our traditional closing words, I offer this blessing for our mistakes, written by Robin Tanner. Today we share in a blessing for losers, risk takers, all failures far and wide. Blessed are those who fall in the mud, who jump with gusto and rip the pants, who skin the elbows and bruise the ego, for they shall know the sweetness of risk. Blessed are they who make giant mistakes, whose intentions are good but impact has injured, who know the hot sense of regret and ask for mercy, for their hearts will know the gift of forgiveness. Blessed are those who try again, who dust off, who wash up, who extend the wish for peace, who return to the sites of failure, who are dogged in their pursuit, for they will discover the secret to dreams. Prophetic Church, the world awaits your risk-taking ministry. Go forward in the power of love, proclaim the truth that makes us free.
That might be a little bit of a reminder.